A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to day 2 of Remembrance 1997. It was a long night last night, ladies and gentlemen. Believe me, it was a long night. Shall I start again? You snap yet nap. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to day 2 of Remembrance 97. Please would you welcome on stage our interviewer this morning, Mr. Paul Jones, and the one and only voice of K9 himself, Mr. John Leeson.
Didn't sleep. Oh dear. Right, I've got questions. In fact, can I just ask the audience?
Yes, please.
I spoke yesterday to Tom very briefly, and Tom said you were a very friendly bunch indeed, and I wasn't to be frightened of you, which is very nice. Hands up. Who got to bed before midnight? 1 o'clock? Right. 2 o'clock? Oh my word. 3 o'clock? Should be ashamed of yourself. I met someone this morning. Oh, 4 o'clock! Any advance on 4 o'clock? You got an auction later on. This chap. Tell you more. Gasp. Yes, gasp you may. Paul, do it.
Well, I was just saying, about any cartoons, John, before we carry on with the canon?
Well, I mean, I haven't about
all done.
There we are, sir. How's your circuit? All right?
Worked very well.
Shame. Did you have an oil change recently? No? Yes, you are. Great, okay.
Right, okay, I'm sure we'll be back to K9 a bit later on, but going back a bit further, first of all, you're not from what could strictly be described as a theatrical background, are you?
I'm not from a theatrical background, they tell me, yes, and yet I'm an actor. Isn't it strange? In fact, all the relatives I seem to have had, the male relatives, were in the Church of England. Both grandfathers were clergymen. My father was a clergyman. My uncle is a clergyman. My godfather was a bishop, and here I am an actor. But it's one of those funny things. It sort of happened that way. The clergymen stand up in front of an audience as much as actors do, so there we are.
So, were you encouraged to go into acting, or was it?
No, I suppose going into acting was a sort of reaction, sort of rebellion. I didn't want to do all the sort of, what's the word, proper things that my parents might have wanted me to do. I wanted to sort of cut loose and do my own thing. And as I was very good at running away as a kid, I thought I would run away into something relatively more creative, so I ran away into the acting business. But it was a little frightening because I did an audition for RADA some years back, and lo and behold, they gave me a place, and I thought, this cannot be right. This is serious. And I got there, and after the first term, I thought, I don't really know whether I want to be here, because this is very much like hard work. Most of the intake, there were about 3,000 people who were auditioning for RADA at that time, and only 30 places. They were streaming the 2 streams of 15. But I was awarded one of the places. But after the first term, half the intake left because they just couldn't stand the pressure, they couldn't stand the pace. Very hard work indeed. And after the 2-year course, as it was then, I think it's now a 3-year course, I think there were only about 11 of us left altogether when we graduated. And now, of course, many years later in the business, relatively few of my intake are still around. Ronald Pickup was one of my contemporaries. Someone called Anthony Hopkins was there, just slightly ahead of me. But no, it was tremendous. So there I went.
So, and then after you left RADA, was it easy then to get work?
Was it easy? Well, no. Drama schools can teach you not necessarily to act. They can never do that. What drama schools can do is to teach you to avoid some of the pitfalls you might meet. It's rather like driving lessons. A driving instructor can't teach you how to drive. You only learn that once you're out on the road by yourself. So you really learn your craft in the theatre, where there were then opportunities to do it. Much less so today. There was a proper repertory system in place there. Rep companies right round the country. And I cut my teeth in a place called Frinton in Essex. Played all sorts of wonderful little silly characters, big characters as well, playing leads for the first time. I remember I played a lovely, dotty old lord called Lord Lister. And as I was looking terribly young, I had to brighten up, put lots of 5 and 9, as we say, on the face, lots of lines, and make myself look really old. For a theatre about the size of this room here, quite a small theatre. And I remember the very first time I came on stage, this crusty old Lord Lister. I sat down heavily at the breakfast table. And my wife, who was sitting opposite me, Lady Lister, suddenly fell into paroxysms of laughter. Because what she saw, what I couldn't see, was that the powder, the white powder I put in my hair, was caught in the lights of the theatre. And it was just a cloud. As I came down, suddenly, there was a great cloud of white powder around me. So that was the first laugh of the evening. But there were more.
Right, and you also did some West End appearances as well, didn't you?
West End, yes, I was very lucky. I did a play called Plaza Suite by Neil Simon. In fact, 3 plays in one, if you like. Played a character in the first play and a character in the last play, and that ran for about 9 months in the West End. Then I did a play called Flint by David Mercer with Michael Hordern and Vivian Merchant and James Grout, which was a very strange and wonderful play. Quite a good play, but that didn't run quite so long. And I took over from Brian Cox. Imagine me taking over from Brian Cox, but I did. In a play called Don't Start Without Me at the Garrick Theatre. And then various other things in London as well, like open air theatre, Regent's Park, and all sorts of places.
Right. Then you sort of moved into TV work. Was that a conscious move, or was it just a case of where the jobs were?
It's where the jobs are, isn't it, really? I mean, I don't think people can suddenly say, I want to do television, therefore I will do A, B, C, and D. You have to wait for your agent to suggest the possibilities that there are. So I went into television. I did 1 or 2 costume dramas and things. Then, of course, I have to say this, but I did a thing called Rainbow. Yes. I was the original Bungle Bear in Rainbow. That was before Geoffrey, pre-Geoffrey. Geoffrey Hayes, in fact, was an acting chum of mine up in Dundee when I was in rep up there with him. And as I was playing Bungle in this telething, he was always around saying, can I meet the producer? Can I meet the producer? Will they want another presenter? And of course, when he did get the job, he stayed with it for, eons. Absolutely eons, ages and ages. Yeah.
Presumably that was difficult to, or different, because you wouldn't be actually seen in a costume.
No, I mean, what have I done since? I mean, what a few things that I haven't been seen in. The most difficult thing about it was wearing that costume, which was so hot. I mean, you had to have salt tablets. Literally, you had to have salt tablets, so you didn't desiccate, you didn't dry up. It was very, very, very hard work indeed in a costume like that. It was designed by a very clever Frenchman who made all the animal costumes for the Beatrix Potter characters in the Royal Ballet's Beatrix Potter thing. And so to have the Bungle mask made, I had to have my face covered in plaster of Paris and 2 straws up my nose and wait while the thing got hot and then set. And it was horrible, horrible. But that's how they do it, they tell me. So I made a mask from that.
And how long did you do that for?
Oh, yes, probably. I did it for about a year. It was the hottest year of my life. And I was a lot smaller then, I think, than I am now. I shrank.
So in one of the early jobs you worked on, you also worked on Dad's Army, is that?
Yes, I did a Dad's Army with the original crew, the original cast, in the very first series, a story called Sons of the Sea, where Captain Mannering decides that it's going to be a very useful thing to have a boat, take the boat out onto the river and zap all the German E-boats as they come along the channel. So they got a boat and they practiced rowing all over the place, and they got onto the river. It got very, very foggy and they lost their way, and they assumed that they'd gone to France. They got all right over the channel, because the scene I was involved in, I was just playing a squaddy guarding a munitions dump or somewhere, with great singing going on in French, but it was French-Canadian pilots who were over here on this side of the shore. But the Dad's Army folks thought, obviously they'd landed in occupied territory, and so they lost all their weapons, and they disarmed all their guns and things, and had a terrible fright. But no, great fun. I was telling you, yes, just before, I could see an interviewer going, get on, for heaven's sake, please, carry on. Rambling away like everything with this chap here. There was no connection at all between the BBC costume department and the BBC makeup department for Dad's Army. Now, the BBC insisted, it was part of the contract, that I had an army haircut to play a soldier. Fair enough. Except it was a real number one. There was nothing left. And I only recently got married, and I think my wife was quite keen to get somebody to get hold of. So to speak. So there I was, absolutely shorn, and then I go to the BBC to report this, and they've got this costume for me, they've got the uniform, got the full thing, but they'd also given me a balaclava helmet. All you could see was my little face and a little tin hat on the top. I was furious, livid. You couldn't see my hair at all. Anyway, there you go. Onwards.
Right. So I think you've done quite a few sort of comedy rounds, haven't you, sitcoms and that?
Yes, I did sort of early sitcoms. Early sitcoms? Why did I say early sitcoms? I had to get up bloody early. No. My Wife Next Door, Rings on Their Fingers, Sorry. What else did I do? All sorts of things. Take Three Girls. There was a lot of sitcom going. What they say was the golden age of television comedy, and I was part of it. There isn't anymore a golden age of television comedy, at least it may be working its way round to another one, I don't know. But sitcom was fascinating, because it's halfway between acting for an audience who are in the studio, they can see you fully, full size, in real time, but you're also playing to a television audience. So it's a bit of a sort of a hybrid. And sometimes you can't get your laughs timed properly because the audience in the studio have probably seen something on the monitor up there or something that's caught their fancy and they're laughing at that. So you can't, it's very odd indeed, but it's a technique to learn and thrive in. It's good fun.
So again, moving on a little bit further, how did the part in Doctor Who come about?
Well, by accident, I suppose, the Doctor Who part, because I'd been doing these kids' shows. I'd done Rainbow, as you heard, and a director who directed me in Macbeth, Scottish play, up in Dundee, Derek Goodwin. And Derek, I'd also worked with at Nottingham Playhouse, and he said to me, well, I don't know, John, I'm doing a Z cars at the moment, and I thought, well, it might be nice, I have mates along, but I might be doing a Doctor Who, I don't know. So I thought, well, fine, okay, if it comes, it comes. But my agent telephones me one day. He says, John, his very grand agent had then, John, I've heard the BBC on the telephone, and they're wondering whether you would be prepared to play a tin dog and the voice of a virus. What do you think? So I thought, well, heavens above, I'm game for anything. So I went along and saw Graham Williams, and Graham Williams said this was K9, well, at least K9 hadn't been made, but the blueprints of K9 were there. And he said, can you give us a voice for this? So I noticed, of course, on the blueprints, that there was a Scotty collar. He still has a Scotty dog collar. So I said, do you want him Scottish? He said, oh, no, don't want him Scottish. But what we want to try and create is the voice of omniscient, a computer who's able to sort of get hold of all sorts of facts and parameters of risk and this, that and the other in a microsecond. But the sound must sound as if it comes out of one unthreatening Woolworth's electrical little speaker from a little transistor radio. It's wanting to sound fairly silly or tinny. Well, I sound fairly silly or tinny myself, so it was no contest, was it? But I went home, having seen Graham Williams, and I said I'd put some voices on tape for him, which I did. And then I got panic calls from his office saying, well, have you accepted the job? I didn't even know that the job had been up. I'd assumed there was a great queue of actors that he'd been seeing through that day and probably the next day and the next week, all being cast for K9. But the job was mine if I wanted it. Lucky me.
Did you know it was going to be a recurring role?
No, I didn't. It was a one-off. They had obviously spent a great deal of money making the module of K9 and making sure it worked. I mean, it moved. There's another story. Yes, well, you probably know it. But they'd spent about as much as the Ford Granada cost, I think, in getting the thing going. So they weren't just going to have it in the one story, I think, from word go. I think they were had a view to putting it into various other stories as well. And I wasn't told, certainly, until about halfway through recording The Invisible Enema. And then, lo and behold, it all sort of just carried on. I was left on the planet with the Doctor. And Professor Marius I had to wave goodbye to. There we are. Lucky me again.
Was it easy to fit in with Tom Baker?
Easy to fit into this? What? Was it easy to fit in with Tom? Oh, yes, heavens, yes. I mean, Tom, you saw him yesterday, heavens above. The most accommodating of people, as I'm sure you realise. He could, theoretically, have been really upstaged. They've never worked with children or animals or robots that don't move very fast and create a hell of a lot of trouble in the studio. Time is money in the studio. Though he could have, quite justifiably, felt a bit upstaged by K9, but wasn't. Part of the reason, I think, and I hope this is right, is that I worked, and I was booked by the BBC as an actor to play an acting role, not as somebody to come in and just do a silly voice and read lines. And it worked from two actors together, getting ourselves psyched up for the parts. It was a partnership, like King Lear and his Fool, or whatever. You know, it was a partnership. And it worked very strongly from that basis. And I think that's possibly one of the reasons why K9 stayed as long as he did in the stories. Because physically, obviously, he couldn't move very fast and was really sort of eating into studio time. And designers hated him because they couldn't put tie bars across doors because he'd stop. He couldn't get over them. And he was very noisy as well. But there we are. Dear little thing.
Yes. It's also well known that Tom rewrote a lot of scripts like in rehearsals. Did you have any involvement?
Well, I don't know. You say rewrote. You say rewrote. We did sort of get sort of with our scripts, which was a good idea because a lot of writers thought that, well, Tom or whoever is playing the Doctor is the lead and was therefore have the most to say. And they kept giving Tom great, vast swathes of dialogue in the text. And Tom would say, come down to base and say, right, well, I think what we can do, look, I'll say that bit, you say that bit, you can say that bit, and then what Tom did, which was ever so good, was blow air into the script, get a dynamic going, which was very, very helpful. I learned a tremendous amount from Tom, actually, as an actor, working in television, how to work in television. He was fascinating because he would always establish a movement whenever there was a beginning, whenever the scene began, cutting to something moving, helped visually to move things along, all sorts of little things. If Tom realised that the camera was shooting him from miles and miles away, his gestures would be that much bigger, so obviously they would read on screen. But nowadays, of course, if you're right up here, MCU or BCU, big close-up, all the audiences want to see is basically what's going on behind your eyes. They say of actors, you know, to do anything is to do too much. Just be there, be in your character, be in your part. So size, I learned a tremendous amount from Tom, and I'm grateful to him. But no, we got on like a house on fire. We're chalk and cheese, heavens above, very different characters. But that's sometimes how things work best, I reckon. Lucky me, again.
So you're saying about writers. Were there any particular writers who you thought wrote well for the show?
Robert Holmes. Robert Holmes, I thought, wrote exceptionally well. Had a great sense of humour, a very wicked sense of humour, and I think was quite subversive as well, which I quite liked. We had I also did Blake 7, I did a thing called Gambit, which was a very subversive thing. I'm not moving on to your next, this is how to manipulate your interview. This is awful. but look, I like things that come from behind, if you like, if you know what I mean. Things that aren't what they seem to be at face value. I like things that have dimension and shape to them, and are possibly a bit naughty.
Right, did you like the translator in the sort of second year on the show where you got the chance to appear in The Power of Kroll, actually in person?
Well, it was interesting playing in The Power of Kroll because I could look into everybody's eyes. I didn't have to look into their knees. It's fascinating. Yes, there's a lovely story attached to The Power of Kroll. I loved being in it. I have to say, although K9 hadn't been undersealed, Z-barted or whatever, couldn't manage swampy planets, I have a good friend who's a makeup artist, Keziah DeWin, and Keziah had been detailed to get all her makeup staff at the BBC to make up these swampies. You remember the swampies? All very green, exceedingly green, so all these bods were presented to Keziah and her chums in makeup. I think the girls had a wonderful time. Making all these people terribly green, and then these green swampies were let loose around the BBC until it was time to record. Of course, they all went and had lunch, didn't they? All the restaurant seats were coated in green because it came off everything. So that they got wrapped over the knuckles for that. But yes, it was fun to do Power of Kroll.
Right, and then it was at the end of that season that you actually left the programme. Why was that?
I left the programme because I realised after having been in it for, getting on for a year, that my face wasn't getting around anymore. I mean, it's fine, it's lovely to play K9 and be K9, but I didn't have time to do what actors need to do, is to be noticed, get themselves seen doing things, because it is only through the sort of grapevine that actors tend to get work. And if you are locked into a voiceover character for too long, it's then assumed that that's all you do, which wasn't indeed the case. A lot of commercials companies would phone up and say, John, we want a robot voice, and we know you do robot voices. Oh yeah. Could you please do K9 for us on a commercial? So I said, well, no, I can't. It's copyrighted to the BBC. So, right, of course it is, yes. So, look, can you do a voice that is very like K9? So, I don't know, maybe I did one or two. But it's extraordinary how the profession sort of puts you in little boxes, the voiceover box, or the theatre box, or the telly box, or the film box. And there's relatively little cross traffic between those areas. So I thought, I've got to get out, got to get my face around a bit. And in fact, I was lucky me, had a year of really good work after I left Doctor Who. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to, admittedly. I left and I thought, whoa, what have I done? But I was lucky, and I did the right thing, I think. Then I was asked back. A year later, producer had changed, John Nathan Turner had come in, and K9 by this time was going to be written out of the series across one or two more stories. And as my colleague, not the one and only K9, David Brierley, in fact, took over, as you know. And David then decided he wanted to go off and do what he had to do as an actor. And then I came back. There we are. Up to date. Well, up to date. That's way back, that is.
Well, as I say, you keep being associated with K9's lots of extra appearances on things like The Generation Game.
Yes, oh yes.
Do they always ask you to do the voice?
They tend to, yes. Well, when they ask me, yes, they do. Haven't been any recently. But I haven't got that agent anymore. No. I've got a very nice agent. She's super. There we are. She hasn't asked me.
Moving on a bit more recently, you've perhaps diversified a little more. You've done some continuity work for Channel 4.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, Channel 4, I've been working alongside Channel 4 for about 10 years as a freelance. Stop it! Sorry. As a freelance voice, right, continuity. I've not been seen as such, but I'm one of those sort of semi-regular people who they call in when other people are having leave or babies or are ill or whatever. So I'm on a long piece of elastic to Channel 4, thank goodness, because it's sort of a bit of an income, which is good. And the other thing I do, of course, is write quite a bit. A chap I'd met some years ago, Tony Marriott, who wrote No Sex, Please, We're British, and various other comedies and things. He and I have been working together for the last couple of years, writing plays for the theatre. We've written 3 for the stage. No, 4 for the stage. We've written 2 or 3 for telly. So that keeps us occupied. I haven't had any success with those as yet, because it's an expensive business putting plays on. And one realises that even a simple play for the theatre, put on in a studio theatre maybe, would cost something between £200,000 and £250,000 in start-up costs. Managements would have to be quite sort of confident in the product, if you like, to put their hands in their pockets for that amount of money. But we're still writing, which is keeping us off the streets and keeping us sane, which is good.
You've also done some teaching as well.
I teach. Well, what do I teach? Well, I teach wine appreciation. Love it. Lucky me. I choose all the nice things, don't I? I used to run a wine tasting circle in Ealing, where I live, years and years and years ago. And gradually it sort of developed, and I've been teaching for local authority, sort of adult education classes, meetings with various people, companies, hotels, whatever, as a sort of wine consultant or a wine education consultant. Doesn't make much money, admittedly, but at least the wine's good and it passes the time in reasonably friendly company, which is nice. And I've done some work also with the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, which is good.
Right, okay, I think we'll throw it onto the floor now if anybody's got any questions.
It's your turn!
Hooray!
Did you base the role of Anthony the DJ on any current DJs or any past DJs?
Right, Anthony, yes, in downtime, yes. But I don't know many DJs in person. I come from a very classical background myself, you do understand this. but probably someone like Brian Matthew, I reckon, as a sort of... It was the only DJ I could think of. And maybe it sort of worked. I enjoyed doing Anthony. It was great fun to do. I was let loose on a script that I could sort of develop a bit. And partly, I suppose, the Channel 4 microphone techniques and all the rest sort of come into it. But did you enjoy Downtime, those of you who saw it? Morning, good morning. Thank you. Questions to the waiter? No? No?
You've got any more questions for John?
Yes, question at the back there. Yes, you! I can just about see you over there. Blinding light coming this way. On-screen romance for K9. I can... Well, there's an amazing thing. Now, this is the first time I've ever been asked this question. It's brilliant. Thank you for that. There was... Did any of you see Poirot last weekend? Did you see that little dog? A fox terrier. Was the best acting dog I have ever seen in my life. It knocked the rest into cocked hat. I mean, the other actors needn't have been on the screen. I could have made a liaison there, I dare say. Other dogs, I don't really know. One needs notice of questions like that. What other good dogs have been? There's been Rin Tin Tin, that's way back, that's black and white. Mind you, K9's fairly black and white. Yes, no, I'll stick with the Poirot one for the moment as being the most recent of K9's amours. All right? Are you happy with that? Okay, good, right. Any more questions? I can't see hands.
Over there by the...
Oh, yes, there's one over there. Yes. Oh, yes. More, I wanted to be a conductor. I wanted to have an orchestra and conduct an orchestra. But yes, no, you're quite... The more you act in the theatre, the more you realise what the possibilities are, particularly in a good play, or a new play even. And if you're writing as well, you again have an input into how plays are made and how they work, how actors work, and how relationships mesh in plays. And it's not necessarily that you want to sort of control things as a director, but you're there, I suppose, as a sort of as a midwife. You want to assist in something good coming together, cohering, good long words, like K9's long words. You want to make things out of what is seemingly nothing. You want to create something. So as a director, you have the power to do that. But I've always maintained the very best directors you work with are those who work out of a basis of consent, rather than a basis of saying, you will do this, you will do that. Question at the front here. Did I like playing the role of K9? I certainly did, enormously. And one of the things that I like particularly is the fact that Doctor Who has lasted so long, longer than you have, by some way, and I can come to events like this and talk to audiences. There are very, very few programmes on television or film. Well, there are some, but there are very, very few that have a live audience that you can connect with every now and then. And that is very, very, very good. So yes is the short answer. All right? So go to sleep. Oh no, there's another question. I could sleep. Thank you for the light. Sir. My most embarrassing moment when playing K9, oh my goodness me. Well, I think when I very first went into the studios and realised that K9 was just not behaving as he should do. I had been rehearsing on the studio floor, being the dog, running around, doing sort of damage to my trousers, for all the rehearsals. And I get to the studios, and this radio-controlled K9 wasn't behaving at all. It had come onto camera, and either the camera would snow up completely, so you couldn't see anything on the camera, or K9 would just go straight into the furniture. And I thought, oh my goodness, the BBC will never ever employ me again. I'm a terrible actor. It was nothing to do with me. It was just the technical difficulties of getting the thing to work, getting the thing to roll. And I've met some K9s in my time, but I think the original ones we had original one we had back at the BBC was perhaps the slowest, noisiest old milk crate. Sorry, beg your pardon. So that was fairly embarrassing. I can't think of any other embarrassing things, really, except it was rather alarming in Brighton when I went filming there to see K9 being hauled along Brighton Beach, which is all pebbly and rocky and whatever, by a long piece of fishing wire. The chap outside, out of vision, I was pulling him along. Yes, any more? Question over there, sir. Yes. Oh, no. I think somebody phoned me. Simple as that. Could I play the voice of... Oh, it was rather strange, I suppose, yes. But I have to say, that particular Remembrance of the Daleks was one of those situations when I was working elsewhere, and the only time I had was sort of half a morning in a recording studio. So I got to see very little indeed, if any, of Remembrance of the Daleks. All I did when I did catch it at all was just to hear the finished result. And I'd been in a studio somewhere in Maida Vale or whatever, putting the voice on a tape. So it wasn't anything like as close a connection as some of the other programs had been. There was another question from that area too. Yes? No?
One on the end there. The very end.
Oh, yes.
Would you like to play K9 if it got such a radio story?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I mean, radio, I think, is so powerful. It really is. And I say this for the reason that the pictures on radio are far better than the pictures on telly, because they're all in here. You create, or the audience creates the world around the radio. I mean, there are so many familiar voices we hear on the radio. We each have our own picture of what these people might look like. And yet, sometimes, if we actually see a photograph of them, we think, well, actually, he's nothing like that, or she's nothing like that on the radio. You create so much on the radio. So I'd love to do Radio K9. Bring back some real radio control. Oh, yes, certainly. Yes.
You said that actually you used to change the script to meet.
Yes, we would modify it to make it work, principally.
You get annoyed when you're playing. You might come along and say, I don't like this bit, but it could work.
I think one would. I think one certainly would. It's a very good point, because, what's sauce for one is throwing goose for the game, absolutely. Tony and myself, when we're writing together, we write very, very, very tightly. And as writers in the theatre, we have control over the script, absolutely. Nothing may be altered without our permission. In television, for writing, it's very different. The writers hand over their creation, lock, stock and barrel, to the television script editors or whatever. And from then on, the script editors have absolute right to do what they want with it. In television, it's only the writer. Call the writer, get the writer in to do something. In theatre, it's the writer. Now, do we have a date free for lunch? Perhaps we can discuss this. The role of the writer in television and in the theatre is markedly different. And obviously, it's so much more powerful writing in the theatre or writing a novel, because once you've written it and you've established those controls and they're written into your contract and so forth, and they then want to novelize it or they then want to televise it rather, you still retain those original controls. You haven't written something at first base for television, which then you've sort of given away. You've still got all your control with it. You follow me? Yeah. More questions at the front here. And this is a very active corridor, I can see. Yes. Yes, I did. I did the voice of a virus in the first program I did, which was supposed to sound rather like a very rotten Christmas pudding. A Christmas pudding that has been left out on top of the oven until about May or June. So really was very, very nasty and thick and gooey and horrible. Whether this actually was conveyed off the television screen, I dread to think. But that's how I thought it should be. It should be really sort of rough. Yeah. Yes, I've done all sorts of voices for different things. I did a kids series some years ago called Jigsaw, which I think is before your time, where I played a lost piece of a jigsaw puzzle. And what sort of voice does a lost piece of a jigsaw puzzle have? You make what sort of jobs are they giving John to do these days? You know, ridiculous. But yeah, I've done all sorts of voices of different kinds. I also read talking books for the blind, and that is brilliant because you meet, as you read a book from beginning to end, all sorts of characters along the way, and you can give all sorts of different characters different voices and so forth. It's fun, great fun. Yeah.
There's a question over here somewhere, I think.
Any questions over there? I'm scanning for questions. Thank you. Any more questions? There's one over there. Thank you for pointing it out. Yes, oh, probably. Yes, probably. I'm not sure that he's got a vote, but I think K9 is subversive enough to require a change. Let's put it that way. There's a political answer, if you like.
Over here on the end.
Yes, thank you. I certainly would. This little chap and myself we know each other reasonably well, so I think I would certainly like to come back and play K9 in any other environment or in any other occasion that he might be asked to come back. I'd love to do it. I really would. I think K9 takes on board a lot of the sort of academic, really sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the characteristics that I've got. I'm very pedantic, you know. I mean, if K9 is asked a direct question, he has to make a direct answer. If he's asked an indirect question, then obviously he hasn't got enough information. Please be more specific. You know, he works, and his mind works in a certain way. This is coming back, really, to what you're talking about. Do we change our scripts? You know, why do we change our scripts? Because there are some things that writers will soon learn. You know, will soon learn that the character works that particular way, and his mindset is such that he can only respond in certain ways and say certain things. But yes. I think quite a lot of me went into K9 in a curious way. But that's one of the advantages of working at it as an actor rather than phoning it in from the sidelines. There's one there, lovely, yeah. Yes? Oh, Patrick Martin, no, I couldn't have, absolutely not, no. No, not really, not consciously. It was just a tinny voice which went up and up. The BBC tended to put fizz on my voice. They used to run it through a ring modulator and make it sound sort of edgy and tinny and whatever, because I was always on a spare microphone, because the other actors were all on their sort of open mics in the studio, and I'd got this little sort of racing commentator's mic, a little lip mic, like that, and that went up on a separate feed up to the sound gallery, and the sound mixers would tweak it as they've been tweaking me away at the back there. Eventually, they found out, of course, that K9 was doing the voice for himself. So they put all their toys away, saved the BBC thousands of pounds. I shouldn't think for one moment. However, there we are. No, not Patrick Moore. No, I can't speak fast enough. Sir, right at the very back, yes. K9 and Company, are we talking about? Well, K9 and Company, I think I was disappointed in a way. I think a fundamental mistake had been, well, among the fundamental mistakes, I think the fundamental mistake was that the story that K9 and Company was based on was Earth-based. Now, there were very, very good reasons for that, and one of the biggest ones, of course, is expense. It costs a lot of money to get designers in to design, well, Gallifrey or wherever. And it would have been, I think, a pity that they didn't do that. They didn't put much money into it in any event. It was a pilot, so, you know, they would float a little bit of money in it and see if a story could run from that. And so this sort of witchcraft story was fine as far as it went, but it was very earthbound, which I think was a shame. K9 too, of course, is not a lead character. He may be on a lead, but he's not a lead character. He doesn't move fast enough. He doesn't. All he is, he's sort of WYSIWYG. It's what you see is what you get. The odd ears and the nose and the eyes and the tail and the whatever. That's all the lead actor can do. So it may have been a fundamental mistake to cast him as a lead. Now, bless her heart, Liz Sladen was wonderful. Sarah Jane Smith, in fact, was the lead in it, and was able to sort of prosecute the story, the heroic line of the story, as best she could. But I wasn't surprised entirely that it didn't take off, the result of that. A shame, maybe, but there we go. Yes, another question at the back there. It is a natural talent, madam. No problem at all, I'm afraid. No, it's funny. One of these extraordinary things, you fall into it almost instantly, because the ambience is right. You're in a studio, you've got all these things round you. There's K9, so you're mentally in K9 mode, so, you know, it's easy. It's quite, what is difficult, what was difficult originally, was when I was doing sort of public appearances as K9, or K9 was sort of going around schools and whatever else, I would never allow myself to be seen physically as me. I would always hide behind a flat somewhere so that nobody knew where the voice was coming from. It was part of the magic. K9 actually speaks. You know, it's a lovely thing. And so now, of course, the magic is long over and gone, and people see me, a man in a rather sensible grey jacket, with this rather sensible grey dog. But it was. I've lost where I am now. Where am I, K9? No, it was great fun to do, but you automatically fall into the mode. I mean, it's very easy for actors to be 127% into something, then switch off and be perhaps 135% into something else. And you know, you wipe things. It's like actors remembering details of stories. I can never remember the details of the stories. I have to watch the Baker year, Tom Baker years, and even Tom linking the programs. Can't remember what that was, but I think I was in it somewhere, or what, you know. So we don't know, because we do the show, and as actors we wipe the slate and we move on to do the next one. You know, it's probably different from actors who are coming in on a one-off basis to do a show. They will remember possibly many more details than you do when you're actually in a series, because you've just got to go on with the next one. You've got a pile of scripts at home, and I haven't looked at this one, you know, I haven't looked at that one. You know, so that's how it goes. Has that sort of gone halfway to answering your question? Good. Excellent. Any more? Any more? Feast of hands. There's one over there. Do you know, I don't ever think I did. No. I didn't have the time, really. I don't think so, quite honestly. I got, that's a terrible thing to say, got better things to do, which is not true, because if you're a Time Lord, it's very important. Time Lords have a lot of clout. But no, I don't have that sort of clout, I'm afraid, no. And I didn't want to be a Time Lord. I was happy being K9, really, I think, possibly.
We have time for a couple more questions in the atmosphere.
Another question from the corridor here. Which of the Doctor's companions did I like working with the most? Well, I think possibly that's what's called a journalist's question. It's a very good question. And I think the answer is yes. I might be able to tell you later. Oh, that's put the rest of you all in. No. No, in fact, what was super is that, he's going to say it, isn't he? He's going to say they were all lovely, in their own way. Well, in fact, they were. What more can one say? I met Mary Tam again the other week, who was absolutely super, firing on all cylinders. Liz Sladen, of course, who was here yesterday. I see Louise Jameson from time to time. There was lovely, lovely, lovely folks. Lovely, lovely folks. I mean, it's invidious. Good word, master. To make distinctions. All right?
There's a question over this side somewhere, isn't there? On the balcony.
Oh, on the balcony, yes. In the ashtray. If it was offered me, of course I would. What fool wouldn't? Heavens above, yes. Gracious me, think of all that power. Think of all the responsibility, too. Oh, hell, heavens, yes. Yeah, of course, it would be wonderful. Wonderful, because it's a great... What? Yes! Wonderful, Andrew. Yes, that's a very good consideration. Perhaps I'll make that my consideration. As long as Tom can play K9, I'll be very happy to play the Doctor. Yes?
And if you could have a real life case, would you like one and what would you get it to do?
We're talking robotics here, rather than, yes, veterinary things. Yes, what would it do for me? Polish my shoes, mow the lawn very slowly. I don't know. It's fascinating. Yes. I was burgled fairly recently. I wonder whether it would keep burglars away. They'd probably take it as well and sell it. Sell it off. Dear old thing. What? What? It's okay. Don't get your ears in a twist.
I think we've got time for one more question.
One more question. This is the last question, so I'm told. Right at the back. Speak. Yes, I think I would. Because the other doctors worked possibly in very different ways to Tom. Admittedly, I was Tom's dog. There's no two ways about it. And so the relationship I had with Tom obviously had its own nuances and it had its own dynamic and worked that way. But yes, I mean, working with John Pertwee would have been extremely different. I think the relationship would have been different. I don't think the K9 would have reacted in the same way to John Pertwee's Doctor as it would have done to Tom, or Colin Baker, or whoever else. So I can. It's a hypothetical question, I suppose. But yes, I would have liked to have tried it and seen how, having established an original Tom's dog base, would adapt to working with other actors playing the Doctor. But it's a good question.
Right.
You get marks.
Okay, so we've got time for us. If you'd like to show your appreciation for John Leeson. To Andrew Beach, who's going to supervise the auctioning off of K9.
I give you Andrew Beach.
I've just been told on about 5 or 10 minutes' notice that this rather splendid K9, from which the mould was taken, which this planet Earth certainly were planning, I don't know whether they still are planning, to release a commercially available model, is to be sold off today.
So how about that?
The proceeds are all going to charity. The 3 charities which the event itself is sponsoring generally, which is Whiz Kids. I understand that's for children with particular disabilities. Hope, which is a fund for Romanian orphans, and that's one of the pet charities of Louise Jameson, so that's rather apt.
And don't forget the RSPCA.
And of course, most importantly, the RSPCA. been put into making it. I mean, it is fiberglass, and it's been made from the original Tony Harding plans. So I hope you'll be very generous.
I'm told there is a reserve on this, and it is either 71,421 Sontaran dollars, or it's £100. That is the reserve. So, do we have any bids?
Shall I wander around with it? It is actually a very substantial prop. I've seen them made into bolts and cardboard before.
Fully mobile, fully frack.
But this is...
Keep burglars at bay. Answer telephones immediately.
Do I have any bids for it?
Any bids? We have 100 at the back. Excellent.
Anyway.
Right, we've got the reserve.
Any advance of £100? There aren't many of these available. I don't know why he takes them all warmly.
Because you look through shock, I should think. 110. Any advance on 110? 120. 130. 140. 150. 160. 170. 180. 190. 200. 210. 220. 230. In there somewhere? Who was 230? Right, with 230, take that in the front. 240. 250. It's got terribly dark, isn't it? 250. 250, that's fantastic. Any advance? 250. Going at 250. Selling at 250. All done? Always one. 260. Any advance on 260? 265. 270. 280.
Very close to...
285. 285. Selling on the balcony at £285. Going once. 290. The suspense is wonderful. 290. Against you at 290. 295.
Oh, is anybody going to do it?
295. Is it going to be 300? Do I have a bid for £300? 300 I have! £300! £300. Any advance on 300? Selling at 300? 305, come on then, 305. 310. Put it down, Andrew. Put it down. 310, we have at the front here, yes? 310. Oh no, all done is what I'm saying. 310 I have at the front. 310. Any advance on 310? Going at 310, selling at 310, sold at 310.